I think we might have Congressman Trey Gowdy on the phone with us this morning. This is really spectacular. Is he there?
Good morning, Ann. How are you?
I'm good, Trey. How are you?
I could not be better because I'm in South Carolina.
You are in South Carolina. Well, that's a good thing. I know you got to be home for the weekend for Valentine's, right?
Well, that and CPAC is going on up in Washington. I don't know if the Democrats have a conference or not, but we got out yesterday, and I am doing the other part of what congressmen ought to do, which is constituent work on today and Monday.
Well, that's terrific. I'm glad to hear it. I hope you spend a little time, though, with your sweetie.
Well, I will. The Republic is in less danger when we're out of Washington than when we're in Washington. So it's actually a good thing for us to leave from time to time.
Absolutely. Hey, Trey, I wanted to, you released a statement on the debt limit increase, and the last part of it I wanted to read because I think it is so essential. I just love what you said. It says each one of us received an inheritance from our parents and grandparents. We received a better, stronger, and more vibrant country than the one they inherited. We have squandered the inheritance. We are the prodigal sons and daughters, except we have credit cards. I hope the generations that come after us will have the courage of the generations that came before us. I fear the political leaders of today have become profiles in timidity and greed. What a statement.
I wrote that. I meant it at the time that I wrote it. I said it on the House floor. And unfortunately, and it's true. When you look at the Bible and the story of the prodigal son, his father gave him his inheritance. He squandered it. He came back home. We have credit cards. We have the ability to borrow. So we are squandering not only our inheritance, but the inheritance of generations to come. And it really is embezzlement, to use a term from my former life. We are stealing from people who are not yet born, and we're doing it because we don't have the courage to say no.
I know, and do you think we have any possibility of changing?
Do we have any possibility of changing?
Changing the direction we're headed, Trey. I mean, whether it's a new election or not, do we have the possibility to change?
Well, we do. I have to believe that we do. But I would say two things. Not only do we need to change directions in terms of leadership. I used to have this conversation with my dad all the time when Bill Clinton was president. I would say, Dad, don't be mad at Bill Clinton. He is what he said he would be. You need to be mad at your fellow citizens who put him in that position. So I would say the same thing with respect to the current administration. He's worse than he said he would be. However, there are still, depending on what poll you look at, 45 to 48 to 49% of our fellow citizens who think he's on the right track. So when I worry about whether or not we're going to make it, I worry about what we have in common with one another anymore as a people. Is it okay now for me to take from you just because you have it and I don't have it? And this recalibration of what's fair, all I ever wanted was a chance. I wanted a level playing field where I could compete and have a chance to have a better life. And nowadays, people want it guaranteed. And if I can't have a better life, then I want to drag you down to where I am. There was a book written, I can't even believe I read it, because back in that time I really wasn't that interested in politics, but Arthur Schlesinger Jr., who I never thought I would quote, wrote a book called The Disuniting of America, What Unites Us Anymore. That was 20-something years ago. It's even more true now. What do we have in common if it's not this sense of personal responsibility and accountability to others? If we lose that, then no, we're not going to make it.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk a little bit about, and you have said it as always, as eloquent as anyone I know, Trey. Now we are, and this brings us right into the the birth control issue that President Obama said everybody had to cover this in their health care policies. Where are we going? I understand this morning he may be changing direction.
Well, and I'm sure the mainstream media will find a way to laud him for. He's going to have to change his mind. He's getting killed from all fronts. The only thing I would say is, in addition to birth control, there are abortifacients that are part of this. For those of us who believe that life begins at conception, it's not just contraception from the standard use of the word. There are abortifacients that have to be provided. I spent about 2 hours last night looking at it. I am convinced that Jesus and his 12 disciples would not qualify for an exemption under this administration's policy. Actually, it's quite clear that Jesus and his 12 disciples, if Jesus were an employer and the 12 disciples were his employees, he would not qualify for an exemption under Commissar Sebelius's rulings. So there is a religious component. There's also a constitutional component. If you look at her statement, Ann, she talked about balancing religious freedom with preventative medicine. When did we ever start balancing religious freedom with anything? It is the First Amendment to the Constitution that protects our free religious expression, and we now have to balance it with what some commissar, Secretary of Health and Human Services thinks we ought to have public policy for. It's a huge deal, which tells me he's going to change his mind, and the mainstream media is going to say, oh, look how great it is we have a president who's open-minded. If he would do this in an election year, 8-9 months before an election, Lord help us. If he's in a second term and he doesn't have to worry about being reelected, Lord help us with what comes then.
It's pretty darn scary, but I just find it so amazing that he actually went forth with it to begin with. I understand it was about women's rights and that women lined up and said, yes, this is something we should do.
Well, where is it written that women have a right to free contraception and free abortifacients? Where is that written? You may think that that's good policy. First of all, I laugh at the notion that it's free. Really? The drug manufacturers are going to give it to the insurance companies for free? Somebody's going to pay for it. It's just his constituencies won't be paying for it. And that's what this is about. It's about solidifying his left flank with the folks ranging all the way to folks who near as I can tell, support infanticide. He wants to secure his left flank. He wasn't counting on the Democrats who happen to be of Catholic faith being outraged, but really set the religion aside. Where are you guaranteed free contraception? Where does the federal government have the power to tell Notre Dame what its health care policy has to include? And what's next?
Does that go back to
make Baptists start dancing?
Well, does that go back to the commerce policy that we talked about?
They would they actually have a better argument for Obamacare under the Commerce Clause than they do for this. Now, they don't have a very good argument regardless. This just speaks to, well, what did Ruth Bader Ginsburg say recently? If she were forming a new country, she would look at our Constitution. She would look at South Africa's. This is a member of our United States Supreme Court who, by the way, got, I think, 93 votes in the United States Senate when she was confirmed. She's sworn to uphold our Constitution, but yet she doesn't think it's good enough to use that as a role model for countries that are starting now.
Trey, I get it.
That's where we are.
I get that you're a little wound up this morning.
I'm wound up because I want people. I do not expect people to follow politics 24/7, and if they do, they won't be happy. I do expect people to realize this is the most important election of their lifetime, and it's not just whether the marginal rates will be set at 35 or 38 or 40. It's not just who controls the House and the Senate in terms of committee assignments. If you want the federal government telling you, dictating the precepts of your religion to you, then you go right ahead and support this current administration. It is so much bigger than just normal politics. It is about the size and scope of government and what they have the power to do. I mean, Ann, let's just take a step back. Let's take a step back. The Catholic Church has been around a whole lot longer than the United States has, and will be around a lot longer than Barack Obama will be around. He really believes that he has the power. I could care less whether he agrees with their views on contraception. I don't agree with them. It's not about what he or I agree with. It's whether they have the power, the freedom to pursue their own religious beliefs, or whether the government, and here's what's coming next. Because our schools participate in federal loan guarantees and get federal grants, what is to keep them from telling our schools, you need to teach a class on this and not on that? What's the difference?
I don't think there is one, Trey.
So once we let them into the system, whether it be through 5% of the money or 10% of the money, they want to control 100% of the agenda. And we need to be very, so when some of us say, look, education is the number one priority in South Carolina, but I don't think the federal government has any business in it. We need to have the self-restraint to say, I'll do without the money to keep the freedom. That's what I see this as about, and whether it's Fast and Furious, or whether it's recess appointments, or whether it's Commissar Sebelius telling the Catholic Church what they have to do, this is such an incredibly important election. And so to the extent that I'm exercised this morning, that's what it's about.
Trey, I certainly hope, you have had questions about whether you were going to run again. Are you going to run again?
Yes, ma'am. That came up, and much in the same way that you and I just went through 4 or 5 issues, and my reelection actually never crossed my mind when you and I were discussing any of them. There are 100 people in this district that could do this job and probably do it better. It's an honor to serve. I never thought, growing up as a kid in this district, that I would ever have the opportunity to serve my hometown and the place where I was born and grew up. I'm just not obsessed with it, and I'd like to serve again. It's just not in the top 20 things that I think about going through the day. And I love serving with my fellow freshmen, particularly the guys from South Carolina. There's a lot of work left to do. I'm not the smartest guy in Congress. I'm not the smartest guy in the South Carolina delegation. I do think having prosecutors in Congress on certain issues can be good with respect to asking questions. So I'm going to do it, but you'll never find me drinking the Kool-Aid and thinking that I'm the only guy or gal that can do it.
Well, Trey Gowdy, we're very, very, very fortunate to have you on our side down here in South Carolina. I think it's great. Do you have a minute just to tell us what's happening with Fast and Furious? I know you've been very close, or I don't know if have you called for Holder's resignation. Where do you think it's headed?
I've called for his resignation, and I didn't do it for political reasons, because justice to me is there's a reason she wears a blindfold. It doesn't have anything to do with ideology. I've just lost confidence in his ability to be the top law enforcement official. He was before oversight a couple of weeks ago. I thought I proved to him that his Justice Department knew about gun walking well in advance. We're going to bring some more. The Greenville County Republican Executive Committee correctly weighed in on this issue by calling for his removal. The reality is, with the calendar being where it is and us not controlling the Senate, we may have to wait until November to remove him as the Attorney General. We're going to stay on it. What's next? I think Patrick Meehan, who's a former U.S. Attorney from Massachusetts and a current Congressman, a freshman, and I are going to be back on television tonight talking about the wiretap applications and what the Justice Department knew and when they knew it. So it's a slow trickle of information because the Attorney General won't turn over documents to us, and the Inspector General has. There have been world wars fought in less time than it's taken her to complete her investigation. But that's where we are. We're still trying to get documents and get information. People are frustrated with the slow pace, and I'm one of them. But that's where we are. And
what show are you going to be on tonight, Trey?
Well, Lou Dobbs has asked me to come on now. The way that works, Ann, is if he gets a better person, then he'll bump me for that person, and I'd be shocked if he didn't get a better person. But the last I heard, he had asked Patrick Meehan, a former prosecutor from Massachusetts, and I to come on tonight. Lou Dobbs, who is on the Fox Business.
Absolutely. Well, Trey Gowdy, it is always a pleasure to talk to you, and I certainly wish you Godspeed, and I certainly hope you enjoy your weekend right here in South Carolina. Don't drink the water up there in Washington,
No,
D.C.
trust me, I won't. I drink sweet tea from Bojangles. It's the only place I can find it up there. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you very much, Trey. Bye-bye.
Yes, ma'am. Bye-bye.